I think it's about time we make some new wall art, trying out some new techniques that are super easy, and I know you're going to love these. Hi, I'm Allie and welcome to my channel. As I said in the intro, we are going to be making some more wall art today. I've been loving making some larger scale pieces, trying out different mediums and things, and this is going to be the video where we do that. And I'm excited to say that I am partnering once again with Ana Luisa for this video. They've just released a collection of personality pendants inspired off of the elements, and after seeing all of these jewelry pieces, I felt so inspired, and I thought that why not use the elements as the inspiration for the wall art. We're going to be putting a little bit of a twist on it that you're going to want to stick around and see how I incorporate the elements into each of these wall art pieces. So without further ado, let's get into the first project. First up, let's make some art inspired by water, and so water is going to be the main technique necessary for this project, and we're going to be trying out something that was a trend a couple of years ago. I have never tried it, but I want to for myself, and that is water marbling. So in order to do it, we need to head outside. These are the supplies that you need for water marbling. You need a variety of different spray paints in colors of your choice, as well as a big container full of water that you don't mind getting covered in spray paint. You're going to want to first mix up your spray paints really well, because we're going to be spraying them super quickly on the surface of the water. So I started layering them in a very different order, mixing in metallics, neutrals. I have some black, silver, gold. Those are just the colors that I had in my stash that I'm working with, but you can really use whatever you want. And then you're going to take a bamboo skewer and mix it up to create that marbled look. Then grabbing your paper, you're going to want to dunk it into the surface of the water. And this is the moment where I realized I forgot to wear gloves, but there was no going back at this point, so I had to dunk the paper under and pull it out, covering my hands in spray paint. But don't worry, I learned my lesson for the next one, as you can see right here. Doing the same thing all over again so you can just see it again. I sprayed in the different spray paint in super random order. I wasn't really trying to go with any sort of look since this was my first time experimenting with the water marble, but I kind of wanted to mimic the look of real marble with my color choices. But I think this would look really pretty in blues or pinks or something along those lines. It's some bright pops of color. And I decided, since I have 3 frames where I'm going to be displaying these water marble pieces, I did a third one, kind of repeating what I did with the first step again. But it's what's really fun about this technique is you never know what you're going to get. But this is just a really fun thing to do. I can imagine having a group of friends over and you try water marbling different things, because you don't even have to just use paper. The possibilities are super endless. But I do think this creates a really unique wall art piece. This next wall art piece is going to be inspired by the element air, and I figured what better way to represent air than by using air dry clay. Now this is my favorite air dry clay by DOS. It is actually a modeling clay. So we're going to be using this, and we're going to make some really cool 3-dimensional abstract art. I'm going to start with a small handful of clay. I kneaded it together really well so that it got nice and warmed up, and then I rolled it out into a thin sheet. And I'm using a fondant roller. It's meant for cake making. However, this roller way cheaper than buying the one specific for clay, and it has these nice bands on the end so you can ensure that you have an even sheet of clay. Now I'm pulling some inspiration from some photos on Pinterest where I saw these art prints, and I thought, why not make my clay shapes mimic the shapes that you see on these inspiration photos? So I'm using my X-Acto knife and I'm cutting that out as carefully as I can, but I'm not trying to be perfect to replicate that inspiration photo. Instead, I'm kind of letting the clay kind of take its own shape, but following the basic structure of the inspiration. And I really do like how this works, because not only are you putting your own spin on it, it ends up kind of creating this cool, free flow, organic look that kind of mimics what we're going for here, which is air. So it kind of just gives a really nice airy feeling to these clay pieces. with this modeling clay, you want to make sure you give it a full 24 hours to dry. If you don't, you will notice that it has not completely cured or hardened right away. So we're gonna wait 24 hours before we move on. While that clay dries, I want to talk about today's video partner, Ana Luisa. They sent me all of the jewelry pieces I'm wearing right now, but I want to talk about this pendant here. This necklace is part of Ana Luisa's recently launched Personality Pendants collection, which features 6 designs: earth, water, air, fire, light, and spirit. Each pendant has a unique personality with a handmade design and beautiful drawings and vintage finish. Now, when Ana Luisa reached out to me to see if I wanted to pick out my own pendant, of course I was so excited to do it, and I picked out the air pendant, which shows this beautiful bird soaring across the sky. And I picked this one because I felt like it matched my personality, as well as the fact that I'm a Gemini, which is also an air sign, so it just seemed to fit. What I also love about this new personality collection is that they could be a great gift for a friend or a loved one, showing them how well that you know them. And all of their other pieces too, I just love their jewelry. They're so classy, elegant, and timeless. I wear my Ana Luisa jewelry pretty much every single day, and every time I wear their jewelry, I am bound to get several compliments, which just makes me feel so good every time that I'm wearing it. And of course, what I always love to say and what I love about Ana Luisa is that they are dedicated to being a sustainable brand and are 100% carbon and water neutral, which means not only does Ana Luisa elevate any outfit that you wear, they are also protecting the earth with all of their jewelry pieces. Now, Ana Luisa is always running some great sales on their website, and if you want to check out their jewelry, because I know you'll love it as much as I do, I have a link in my description box. And I also have a special discount code for you guys. You can get 20% off using my discount code on the screen right here, actually Alli20. Now let's get back into making this air-inspired wall art piece. It's been about 24 hours and our little clay pieces are looking so good. They're nice and dried, ready to go. And I figure, why not display them in a really cool way using these wood canvases? They're supposed to go this way, but if you flip them around to the back, they create a shadow box effect, which I think will look really nice with the clay underneath to create this 3-dimensional art. The first thing we gotta do is just get everything painted and ready to be assembled. I wanted to go with a very light and neutral base for these canvases, so I'm painting in the inside with this kind of off-white, sort of grayish color, and it just creates a very nice base. And I only went in with 1 coat because I really liked how the wood grain from these wood canvases peeked through a little bit underneath the paint. Now with those clay pieces, while those canvases were drying, I then just lightly sanded all of the edges to smooth them out, get rid of any of the jagged edges left behind from the X-Acto knife. And we're gonna be going with a very light and airy color scheme for this piece, and I really wanted to pull in the blues and some more neutral tones to mimic the sky or even kind of like a beachy look, which coastal is really making a comeback in home decor, so I feel like it fits right in with that trend as well. These pieces almost kind of look like they're making either some sort of stone form or even sea glass is kind of what it reminded me of after I painted all of the different pieces in the various colors. I stuck with 4 colors for my pieces, however you could pick as many or as few as you want. I think this could look even cooler as a completely monochrome color scheme as well. And then once all the paint had dried, I just used my hot glue gun to arrange the pieces into that little shadow box canvas frame that we have, and they were ready to be displayed. The element that we're going to use to inspire this next piece of art is earth, and I was doing a lot of brainstorming on how to translate earth into art, and I thought, why not do something like mineral based or something like that? So I decided to go with concrete. I just think this will make a very nice, organic, very natural look, and I'm going to try out some new techniques because I have never used concrete to create artwork, so this should be hopefully fun. While concrete on its own will make a great texture, I thought adding in fabric would also just really emphasize the look of this. So I'm using some canvas duck cloth, which is pretty much my favorite fabric to always have on hand for various different crafting. It is so versatile and I pretty much use it all of the time. So I started ripping apart and cutting down little pieces that I'm going to be laying on the canvas. I just laid out the pieces in a way that I felt looked nice with various different sized rectangles. Then the next thing you have to do is mix up some concrete. If you live in an apartment like me, then you definitely want to mix it up in a container that you could just dispose, that you're not attached to, because this is not good to be washing down the drain. So I mixed it up with some water until it was a nice kind of soupy texture. That doesn't actually sound very nice. And I just brushed that straight onto the canvas panel that I'm going to be using for the base of this project. Once I had a good even coverage, I then began taking the fabric pieces that I cut out and dunked them right into that concrete mixture and started laying them and arranging them on the canvas exactly how I liked. And you want to have a nice even coating of concrete mix on top of each of your fabric pieces so that this really sticks and clings together on the piece. As I'm working on this concrete piece, I did want to throw out a little shout out to Jorge over on Casa Refined. His art and using of concrete in the DIYs that he makes truly inspired me to create my own piece using concrete. And if you haven't checked out his channel, I definitely recommend it. And for good measure, I had a little leftover concrete mixture, so I just brushed that over the entire top of the fabric, the canvas panel, and set that aside to dry for 24 hours. It is day 2 of our concrete project, and I have to say, this is looking so good. I am just in love with the texture. The concrete dried very well. It's holding up very well. So now what we're gonna do is go in with some paint. I do like this as is, but it does look a little bit plain. So I picked out a couple very neutral, kind of earthy tones that I want to use to paint on this. But instead of going in with a very solid coat of paint, I figured why not just do kind of washes of these colors, layer them on top, and kind of just see how the concrete and the texture takes the pigment versus trying to cover up that beautiful naturalness that we created with the concrete. I really had no method when I went in to paint this piece other than the fact that I wanted to bring in a little bit more dimension, a little bit more of that earthiness since that's the theme of the project. So I started with my darkest color first, which I mixed up kind of a warmish grayish brown tone. And I'm kind of just not being careful with where my brush strokes go. I'm just going in all sorts of directions because I thought that that would look really, really nice compared to a very uniform, even paint coat. I even went in with some other colors and kind of dabbed the brush all over the surface to create a little bit of some speckling. And I think my favorite part when I was starting with those darker colors is when I layered in this kind of rusty brown tone and I dabbed that all over the surface to create this really unique effect and texture with that chip brush. I think that looked really good. And then after I got my darker colors on, I started working in with my medium tones. So I'm using this taupey color right here, brushing that primarily over the entire surface with good watered down paint. Throughout this entire process, I made sure to keep soaking my brush in water. That way it would create more of a light finish instead of covering up that beautiful concrete texture. I wanted this to look like it was almost outside and weathered and worn, like stone that you would find in real life versus a beautiful art piece that we're creating. And after I was happy with my medium tone brushed over the entire thing, I let the entire piece dry just so I could start to see the true colors come back in, layered in where I thought maybe I needed a little bit more of that brown or the darker tone, and then I let that dry once again. And then I was able to go in with my lightest color, which was kind of like that off-white gray you saw from the air dry clay piece. And I really like this because it just brings in that dimension, and I used it to accentuate the different frayed edges of the fabric, and I think this was the step that really tied the piece all together. And as one final step, I watered down some paint on this bristly paintbrush and flicked it onto the canvas to create just small little speckles. And that was definitely the finishing step that it needed. And to make sure this entire art piece that I just worked so hard on doesn't fall apart, I gave it a very solid coat of matte clear spray paint. Next up, the element that we have left is fire, and I thought for this one, there's a couple different ways we could go. We could actually burn things, but I'm in an apartment and I don't want to set off my smoke alarm and have no good exterior place to DIY in the middle of winter. So I thought, why not do something that is already burnt, which is charcoal. Now, I often try to avoid using fine art supplies on the channel because I feel like they seem intimidating, maybe out of reach. However, charcoals are very inexpensive. You can get a small basic pack of pencils, which is primarily what we're going to be using, for rather cheaply at the craft store. And they're really not that hard to use, especially what I'm about to show you, which is a just very basic landscape. We're gonna keep it abstract, we're gonna keep it free form, and I promise you to not be afraid to try real art supplies when creating DIY artwork. That way, what you're using has a really good texture to grab onto and adhere to. If you use plain paper, it just doesn't stick quite as well. So I'm using this specific pastel paper, but you could use watercolor or even anything as long as it's just not a smooth surface type paper. And the very first thing I did was just draw out a really quick sketch of a landscape, kind of basing it off of this photo as my inspiration. If you get a basic pack of charcoal pencils, you'll get 3 to 4 black charcoal pencils that are of different hardnesses, as well as probably a white one as well, and it also may come with that kneaded eraser. Those are the tools that we're going to be using to make this. So I started with the basic charcoal pencil right here, just kind of sketching out this landscape. I don't know why, but I started with the middle ground of my landscape instead of the background foreground here, and I just kind of made some lines and then blended them together with my finger. I then went in and drew the foreground of this little hill type landscape scene and drew some really just organic lines, not really caring what the shape they were. I wanted this to kind of have a sketch type of feel versus a very detailed art piece. Again, we're going for abstract and simple, and less is more with this charcoal drawing. And then moving to one of these softer pencils, I then started layering in some darker tones for this other little hill right here. And then I began drawing in the tree line, and I just did some little scribbles starting at the base of these little evergreen trees and then going upward to a point, and just did that a couple times, making it look like there's kind of a forest with big tall trees in the background. I also wanted to throw in a couple normal type trees, so you can see I drew some scribbles sporadically in a bit of a circle patch, and then went in with a squiggly pencil a little bit lighter to form a tree with a little extra dimension to it. Once I was happy with how the base of this landscape was looking, I wanted to blend this a little further than just using your finger would blend it, and a great way to do that, super easy, is with a paper towel. So I used that paper towel to blend out the different areas of the grass as well as a little bit in the trees by dabbing the paper towel on top of them. And I think this just made the piece start to really come together. But because I felt like that foreground was a little too dark, this is where that kneaded eraser is super handy. I went in and kind of erased out some of the areas where it'd be a little bit lighter toward the top of the hill and off toward the side where the hill got a little bit flatter. I drew in some lines to make some taller looking grass in the foreground, again, kind of looking at my inspiration piece for this. And then it was time to color in the sky, and I used some of the willow charcoal, but you can really use your charcoal pencils for this. And I just filled it in, blended it in with the paper towel really well, Went in, darkened up a little bit of areas where the clouds wouldn't be, and to really create the look of clouds, you can go in with your kneaded eraser and kind of dab away areas to bring back the white of the paper, and the clouds really start to shine through. This is such a fun way to kind of remove some of the charcoal and create a really cool sky look. And because you get that white pencil with your pack, I went in, scribbled some white on the clouds to really emphasize them, and then brought a little bit of the white pencil into the grass and landscape scene that we created. To make sure your charcoal doesn't smear, you're going to want to seal it. I used some art fixative, but you could also use a matte clear spray paint. To display this art piece, I picked up an 11 by 14 shadow box. I love the look of this one that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. And to elevate the piece from the background, I'm using a couple extra tiles I had from a previous project. You could really use any type of thing like foam, little scrap wood pieces, whatever you might have, just to add a slight amount of elevation between the backing and your art piece, and then of course the glass of your shadow box frame. It was just very simple. I used hot glue and assembled the whole thing together, and I was so happy that I finally went back to some of my art roots to come up with this final piece. Now don't forget to check out Ana Luisa with the link in the description box, as well as that special discount code I have for you to get 20% off your purchase. And if you want to see more videos, I recently released my living room makeover that is on the screen right here, or maybe you'd rather check out this one instead. Thank you so much for watching this video. Stay crafty, and I'll see you next time. Bye!